Thank you, Jack and Elizabeth. That was lovely. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. I'm Bob Balderson, and I am delighted to serve as your worship associate today and to welcome you fully into our beautiful space. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all you are bringing with you today and all your heart longs to set down. We welcome all of you. We extend a special welcome to our guests among us. Guests are invited to come early on another Sunday and drop into the Inquirers session at 10:10 a.m. in the parlor to learn more about Unitarian Universalism and our church in a smaller, casual gathering. We invite our guests to fill out a welcome card, which is located in the pew rack in front of you, and drop it in the offering plate later in the service. You can also pick up a welcome packet at the back of the sanctuary. Hearing assist devices and Braille hymnals are also available at the rear of the sanctuary, and a fragrance-free area is located to the right front of the sanctuary. If you are a visiting family, including children or youth, please join the children's recessional after the time for all ages and head across the hall to the common room. There you will be greeted by someone who will orient you to religious education. Immediately following the service, everyone is invited for coffee and conversation in the common room across the hall. Again, my name is Bob Balderson, and I will be at the guest table. As a way to engage at First Church, I invite everyone to explore the announcements insert in the order of service for the numerous opportunities available here at First Church. In particular, let me draw your attention to the following. Our Spring Journey to Membership class will be held April 10th through May 1st on Wednesday evenings. Explore UU theology, history, social justice, and your own spiritual journey, and become a new member at First Church. Register at the member services table during coffee hour or online. Please pledge by Tuesday, April 2nd, to support this community and to help our financial committee finish our budget for next year. If you have not yet pledged, please do it during coffee hour in the common room or online, and please do it today. Adults are invited to join the religious education community at 12:30 p.m. today for pizza and salad lunch, followed by a beezentation, that's B-E-E-zentation, and viewing the pine cone swarm created by the children. The chronologically gifted group, TCG, will meet for its monthly potluck at 12:30 today in Max Otto Hall. Please bring a dish to share, and if you don't have a dish to share today, come anyway. There's always plenty of food available. Unitarian Universalists under 40 doing activities. UUUFDA, also known as UFTA, right? Yeah, UFTA is taking brunch on the road in April. Join UFTA at the Sherman Phoenix at 12:30 p.m. on April 7th. Please find details on these and other events in our announcement insert. Finally, please silence any electronic devices for the rest of the service. Once again, I welcome you to First Church and invite you to join me in the unison reading of our mission, which is printed in your order of service, and let's say it like we really mean it. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. This time I invite Liam Brooke to come up and light the chalice. Come on, Liam. Oh, that's it too. See, inspire action.
It's hard to wait. Our opening words today are "Having Come This Far" by James Broughton. I've been through what my through was to be. I did what I could and what I couldn't. I was never sure how I would get there. I nourished an ardor for thresholds, for stepping stones, and for ladders. I discovered detour and ditch. I swam in the high tides of greed. I built sand castles to house my dreams. I survived the sunburns of love. No longer do I hunt for targets. I've climbed all the summits I need to, and I've eaten my share of lotus. Now I give praise and thanks for what could not be avoided, and for every foolhardy choice. I cherish my wounds and their cures, and the sweet enervations of bliss. My book is an open life. I wave goodbye to the absolutes and send my regards to infinity. I'd rather be blithe than correct. Until something transcendent turns up, I'll plash in my poetry puddle and try to keep God amused.
Now.
Will you please rise in body or spirit and join us in our opening hymn, number 211. Good morning.
Good morning.
The story I have for you today is Ruby's Baby Brother by Catherine White. Not my Ruby, though. Mom's coming home with Leon today. I'm nervous, and I wonder if he's here to stay. Babies are smelly, and they make too much noise. And Leon is bound to snatch all my toys. So I've just made my wand and a big starry hat, and I think I'll turn Leon into a bat. Then I'll open the window and out he will fly and sleep upside down in an oak tree nearby. Suddenly, Mom and Leon are here. It's strange and it's scary. I dare not go near. I secretly peek my head around the door.
I wonder if Mom is the same as before. Is she holding a baby or is it an elf? He's bound to have magical powers himself. What if he says to me, "This is my house, so Ruby, I'm turning you into a mouse." I'll live in this mouse hole deep under the stairs, and I'll have to sneak out for breadcrumbs from under the chairs. Then Dad kneels beside me. He says, "Come and see. He looks just like you. He's as sweet as can be." I hear a strange gurgle and a hiccupy noise. I don't want to see him. I hate little boys. This isn't my brother. This isn't my brother. He's come from the stars. He looks like a creature from Pluto or Mars. I'm making this rocket up here in my room, and I'll blast Martian Leon right up to the moon. Well, now Leon is wailing. Trust him to cry. Mom says he's pooey. That's probably why. Dad's going to change him, a fun thing to do. But what about me? Look, I'm here too. Then Mom hugs me tight, and we sit on a chair. She's talking and laughing and braiding my hair. Dad gives me Leon, who opens his eyes, and he clutches my finger. I laugh in surprise. His hand is so tiny. He's so warm and small. I wrap myself around him in one cuddly ball. I'm a busy big sister. There's so much to do. I find all my paper, my crayons, and glue. These are our swords for the battles we'll fight when we're riding on quest as a queen and a knight. This hat that I've made he'll wear every day. When he's a captain, we'll sail on the bay. I'll battle fierce serpents that rise from the sea and then rescue Leon with this golden key. And these are his wings when he's ready to fly. We'll both build a castle high up in the sky. And I'll use my spells and my magical powers to tame fiery dragons that circle the towers. This spaceship will help us to zoom far away. Leon will steer, and I'll tell him the way. Whizzing faster than light, we'll shoot into space and wave at our house from some far distant place. But when it is night and the moon shining high, when witches and wizards and ghosts start to fly, when he's lying afraid of a creak on the stair, he won't have to worry. I will be there. We invite children and teachers to join in singing verse 1 of the hymn and then proceed to class as the congregation continues. Will you please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 348, Guide My Feet.
I'd like to invite you in now for a time of contemplation, which will be followed by silence, followed by the seated singing of Spirit of Life. So take a moment now to just feel your body. Feel your sit bones pressing into the seat beneath you. Your feet on the floor grounding you. Feel that spot on the tip top of your head connecting you to all that is. And feel your breath moving in and out, bringing you into here and now. Spirit of life and love, Holy One of our being and our becoming, that which is sacred within, among, and beyond us. We each have our own hardest journey, our own highest mountain, and our own commitment to climb. And we each have our own team. The people around us who love us and are pulling for us, who wrap the rope around their own waist and haul us up once again. We even have teammates we do not know. Those other humans sending their stories across time to us, whispering, "You can do this." And even though not one of us will survive this life, we are all here now, facing the climb. May we each be tethered to our team by the cable blue fire ropes of love. And may we know it. May it be so. Our reading today is an Adrian Rich poem entitled Fantasia for Elvira Shatayev. Shatayev was the leader of a women's climbing team, all of whom died in a storm on Lenin Peak in August of 1974. Later, Shatayev's husband found and buried the bodies. The cold felt cold until our blood grew colder. Then the wind died down and we slept. If in this sleep I speak, it's with a voice no longer personal. I want to say with voices. When the wind tore our breath from us at last, we had no need of words. For months, for years, each one of us had felt her own yes growing in her, slowly forming as she stood at windows, waited for trains, mended her rucksack, combed her hair. What we were to learn was simply what we had up here, out of all words, that yes gathered its forces, fused itself, and only just in time to meet a no of no degrees, that black hole sucking the world in. I feel you climbing toward me, your cleated boot soles leaving their geometric bite colossally embossed on microscopic crystals as when I trailed you in the Caucasus. Now I am further ahead than either of us dreamed anyone would be. I have become the white snow packed like asphalt by the wind. The women I love lightly flung against the mountain. That blue sky, our frozen eyes unribboned through the storm, we could have stitched that blueness like a quilt. You come, I know this, with your love, your loss strapped to your body with your tape recorder camera, ice pick. You come against advisement to give us burial in the snow and in your mind. While my body lies out here flashing like a prism into your eyes, how could you sleep? You climbed here for yourself. We climbed for ourselves. When you have buried us, told your story, ours does not end. We stream into the unfinished, the unbegun, the possible. Every cell's core of heat pulsed out of us and into the thin air of the universe. The armature of rock beneath these snows, this mountain which has taken the imprint of our minds through changes, elemental and minute as those we underwent to bring each other here, choosing ourselves, each other, and this life, whose every breath and grasp and further foothold is somewhere still enacted and continuing. In the diary I wrote, now we are ready, and each of us knows it. I have never loved like this. I have never seen my own forces so taken up and shared and given back. After the long training, the early sieges, we are moving now almost effortlessly in our love. In the diary, as the wind began to tear at the tents over us, I wrote, We know now we have always been in danger, down in our separateness and now up here together. But till now, we had not touched our strength. In the diary torn from my fingers, I had written, "What does love mean? What does it mean to survive?" A cable of blue fire ropes our bodies, burning together in the snow. We will not live to settle for less. We have dreamed of this all our lives. In May of 2015, I was at a ministers' conference in Boston a few weeks following a very painful experience in my life. I was trying to keep all my feelings at bay and be a totally put-together minister, at least until the end of the church year in June. When I arrived in Boston in May, away from my church and my responsibilities, I was suddenly overwhelmed with a flood of feelings that had just been waiting for my attention. During the conference, we were invited to the Unitarian Universalist Association's weekly chapel worship. I went into that worship very guarded, feeling vulnerable and having a hard time keeping up the facade of being totally put together. So, of course, the worship leader had a story that was meant just for me. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find the name of the person who was leading worship that week, so I repeat this story to you all without knowing its original teller. But if you are out there, thank you. Your sermon changed my life. The preacher at the UUA that day told the story of another Unitarian Universalist who, for the sake of this story, we'll call Sue. Sue was on a journey that many of us might recognize, that of facing difficult truths in her life, of climbing mountains and overcoming obstacles, of doing that great big thing that was the scariest and most difficult. And in her process of overcoming obstacles, Sue moved the mountain climbing from the metaphorical to the literal and began training to climb Mount Everest. The mountain. Now, it takes about a year to train for an Everest climb. It includes physical strength and aerobic capacity, stamina, lung health, and significant mental endurance. Climbing Mount Everest not only requires leg strength, but it requires core strength and low back strength, enough to carry a heavy pack for many days. It requires lungs that are trained to breathe in air that gets thinner and thinner. And it requires the mental and emotional endurance to move through freezing and wheezing, exhaustion, fear, and just plain boredom. Climbing a mountain, especially one as big as Mount Everest, takes physical endurance and adaptation. The human body is generally not equipped to live above 26,000 feet. And base camp for Mount Everest starts at 17,000 feet above sea level. High altitude causes physiological changes in the body, including more alkaline blood, increased red blood cell production, and the kidneys releasing bicarbonate. A person's body literally changes as they ascend the mountain because it adapts in order to survive. The most common route up Mount Everest is taking a plane from Nepal's Kathmandu to Lukla, which is a small town in northeastern Nepal, 9,000 feet above sea level, and then climbing from there up to base camp. Now, Lukla is a cluster of colorful teal and orange tiled roofs nestled in rocky, snow-capped mountain peaks. And the Lukla airport is the most dangerous airport in the world. It's also the safest part of the journey. So when you fly in between rocky mountain peaks in snowy and stormy weather and land on a tight, short runway, your journey has just begun. Base camp is another 8,000 feet up from there. From Lukla, it takes 2 days of climbing and resting to reach Namcha Bazaar, which is the Sherpa capital located 11,000 feet above sea level. Most people stop there for a day to rest and let their body acclimate to the altitude. Namcha Bazaar has about 400 homes built there into the mountainside where Sherpa people live, teal edges climbing up into that blue journey. In Namcha Bazaar, our sermon journeyer, Sue, found a Sherpa who was working in the tourism industry to help with the trek, and she hired him to help her climb up the mountain. She was with a team of other trekkers who had also been training for the climb, people she did not know well, but who shared her dedication to this harrowing journey. And of course, when you climb a mountain for days and weeks, sleeping outside, risking your life, you get to know folks. From Namcha Bazaar, it takes another 2 days to climb 3,000 more feet up to the next Sherpa village. And from there, it takes another 2 days of climbing and resting to make 4,000 more feet up to South Base Camp. So our Unitarian Universalist friend Sue is slowly making her way up the mountain with her chosen team of trekkers, several Sherpas, and a few other journeyers who had been training for months to make their way up the same external mountain and surely very different internal mountains. On the way up, Sue started experiencing shortness of breath. While they were walking, she wasn't worried about it. Climbing Mount Everest is hard, and the air is thin. But when she was still short of breath at rest, she was somewhat concerned. Their team talked about it and decided to wait another night to see if her body would adjust, because it takes several days for a human body to adjust to high altitude. But the next morning, Sue's shortness of breath was worse, not better. Her chest was tight and her breathing had become rapid. She and her team of travelers realized that her body was in distress. Instead of having altitude sickness, it looked like Sue was developing what's called high-altitude pulmonary edema, a potentially fatal condition that less than 1% of people develop, and usually randomly. There are 2 treatments for high-altitude pulmonary edema. One is immediate oxygen, and the other one is immediate lower altitude. Both of those treatments required getting back down the mountain as quickly as possible. The trick was, though, that by this point, Sue could not walk. Her body was in such distress that it was taking everything in her just to breathe. By the time they all understood what was happening and how quickly they needed to get her back down the mountain, Sue could not even stand. Her team moved into action. They scavenged through their climbing gear to make a stretcher for her. And then one of the Sherpas and the strongest trekker agreed to team up and carry her down the mountain. By this point, Sue was fighting to breathe and one of her lungs was crackling. She needed medical assistance, but there was no way for her to get to a hospital except through a possible helicopter airlift out of Namcha Bazaar, which was several thousand feet back down the mountain. And so for days, Sue lay there on a makeshift stretcher, looking at the sky, lying stretched out between the hands of her 2 teammates. Her life literally in the hands of 2 men she barely knew. She had chosen both of these men as teammates for her journey, and now they were choosing to save her life. She was staring up into the clear blue air of the sky, mostly focused on her own belabored breathing and unable to move much at all. They had wrapped her so tightly to the stretcher so she would not fall as they scrabbled down some of the more difficult paths. The Sherpa spoke very little English, but the other trekker spoke to her on their curving descent as she stared there hanging between life and death in the sky, he told her story after story, unwinding his voice like a tether for 2 days. On that unexpected journey, it was Sue's teammate's voice that anchored her to this world, acted as a tether between her and her body, weaving its way through exhaustion and fear and the thin air of the universe, connecting her to life. It was a blue cable rope of fire, connecting spirit to body and body to other bodies in this surprising struggle. And even though Sue could not move or speak, even though she could not do anything but lie there and breathe, trusting her team, this man she barely knew kept talking to her. The whole 2 days back down the mountain, carrying her in his hands and on his voice to safety. Listening to that story in the chapel back in 2015, I saw the tether tossed out from teammates. I felt that cable blue rope of fire unwinding from this preacher's voice, unspooling to me, sitting there in the pews, shaking in my seat, and reaching back to him, but also through him, through his body, back to Sue. And through Sue's body, back to the man speaking to her and the Sherpa carrying her, and even back before them to the teammates who once upon a time had saved their lives through story or song sometime when they needed someone to reach out slowly, carefully, and reel them back in, staring up at the blue sky and wonder at this life and its tenuous connections, pulling that line across life and death. Sitting there in worship, the storyline of fire saved my life too. Pulled me back from the brink and told me I was on a team even if I didn't know the preacher or the mountain climber or the Sherpa or the talking trekker or any of the people in the line before them. I was on the team, I was roped in, I was connected through that thin blue cable rope of fire to so many lives before mine. And held in by that rope, I finally wept. We don't always have the luxury of choosing our journeys. Sometimes our journeys choose us, and sometimes when we don't choose, when the journey reaches out and picks us, quite frankly, I have to tell you, those journeys stink. They are not the journeys we want. They are not the journeys we have chosen. They aren't even the journeys we would wish on our worst enemy, and yet there we are in them. Suddenly being carried down the mountain on a makeshift stretcher with a single melodic voice, storytelling tenuous tethers between our body and this world. Our lives in the hands of a team we don't control and might not even know. In Adrienne Rich's poem of the mountain climber Elvira Shatayev and her team died on the side of that mountain, the bodies of the women that she loved, so alive in their climb, flung lightly there, tied together by a cable blue rope of fire. And yet, even in that, Rich finds celebration. She finds love, deep, passionate love there among the women who did not survive. What does it mean, she asks, to survive? What does love mean? We have been waiting for this journey, waiting to live this fully, waiting to climb into ourselves and our own power together here on this mountain for all of our lives. And now, even in death, we stream forward into the unfinished and the unbegun. For Rich knows that death is part of the climb. None of us will survive this life, and yet in the climb, in the journey, even and maybe especially in the ones that fail, there is deep and abiding love. There is passion. Passion for the climb, passion for the journey, love for your team, gratitude at having one more day to suck that clear, blue, cold mountain air into your fighting for life lungs. Sometimes your teammates walk you down the mountain, trailing your breath and tethering your life with their storied voice, roping you back to this earth. And sometimes your team walks you off the mountain and out of this life, the cold growing colder until the wind dies down and you sleep. You cannot always choose your journey, but you can live every breath fully while you still have it. You can climb a mountain or make a different one move and know the whole journey long how much you love your team and trust them with your life, fire cabled to theirs. May it be so.
Every week, we have an opportunity to practice our values through sharing our resources. Our pledges are at the core of our spiritual practice of generosity. In addition, the church shares half of all the non-pledged cash in the offering plate with a community organization. In this way, we commit our resources in line with our belief that this congregation is interdependent with the world beyond these walls. Today we share the plate with Pathfinders. May the practice of giving bring us joy. The offering will now be gratefully accepted.
Will you please rise in body or spirit for a responsive reading, which is excerpted from Fantasia for Elvira Shatayev by Adrienne Rich. I'll begin. In the diary I wrote, "Now we are ready."
And each of us knows it.
I have never loved like this. I have never seen my own forces so taken up and shared.
And given back.
After the long training, the early sieges,
We are moving almost effortlessly in our love.
in the diary, as the wind began to tear at the tents over us, I wrote, "We know now we have always been in danger.
Down in our separateness.
And now up here together, but till now,
We had not touched our strength.
in the diary torn from my fingers, I had written, what does love mean?
What does it mean to survive?
A cable of blue fire ropes our bodies burning together in the snow. We will not live to settle for less.
We have dreamed of this all our lives.
And will you join in singing our closing hymn, number 318?